Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Mohit.
Hi, namaste, namaste. How are you doing?
Good, and you?
Very good. Thank you very much. We've got friends joining in now.
Yeah, I can see that. It's great. So I'll start sharing my screen. Just let me know if you can see everything. Yes, can see. Okay, great. Let's start then. Well, fostering safe human-elephant interaction is critical to the survival of the African savanna elephant. So good evening, everyone. I'm Meline Klopfenstein, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you for coordinating this webinar to the Asian Adventures team. Thank you so much. It's a great opportunity. I'm really happy to be here today with you. And I'm really happy to share with you my PhD project that I'm about to start. So this work that I'm going to present to you today really reflects my passion for wildlife conservation and especially for elephants. And it really aims to bridge the gap between scientific understanding and real world changes and I think that because of this webinar and this opportunity that Asian Adventures is giving me, I really hope that we'll be able to raise the money needed to get this project to have a really positive impact, and that's the main aim of that project. So I want to start with a video, so let me just share that video. I'm sure you've all seen these kind of videos online. So I'll just start the video, and if you can't hear the sound or anything, please let me know. I'll just start here. Okay, so I'll just stop here because then it kind of keeps going like that, and I'll go back to my PDF, my PowerPoint. So I'm sure you've all seen these kind of videos online on social media. There are a lot of examples of elephant charging, elephants flipping the vehicles around, elephants chasing tourists. There are really a lot of examples like that in Africa and in Asia alike. And this videos can be on safari and also for local communities, with not just on safaris, but outside of protected areas as well. And it often leaves people thinking that elephants are very aggressive. And I think that we need to wonder, like, are they really aggressive? Or I think we've all, at least in videos, maybe even experienced very peaceful moments with elephants. So I think we need to think about what are these moments really about. And that's really what I want to focus on in my research. So before we're diving into my research, I want to show you a bit of where we're going today. So first we'll be looking at the problem. So what is the conflict about? What are the consequences on both sides, humans and elephants? And then I'll zoom out a little bit, look at the bigger picture of why we have so many conflicts today, what it is increasing, and all of that. And then we'll dive into the research, the questions that I'm asking, why I'm asking these questions, and how we'll be answering them using the tourism lens. Then I'll show you the practical outcomes that I aim to deliver with this research, and not just the academic outcomes, because I think the most important outcomes to me are actually the practical tools that I want to put in place. And then I'll share with you how we can make it happen together and how you can be part of that journey. So, I forgot the arrows, sorry. So I'll just give you a little bit of who I am. I am a conservation biologist with a strong interest in human-wildlife coexistence and especially human-elephant coexistence. I have done a bachelor in international development because I actually wanted to learn more about conservation and the bigger picture, because I do really believe that conservation is not just about the animals, it's really about how we live together. And then I did a Master's of Science in conservation biology to really kind of get this full picture of conservation. I also did a couple of research projects in Africa, in Namibia, Kenya, Ghana, so spending a lot of time on the ground. Some of this research actually being published right now, so it was all about human-wildlife coexistence. And these research were, to me, very valuable, as they were allowing me to immerse myself in what it is like to live alongside wildlife. So I am from Switzerland, but I've actually spent a lot of time in Africa for this reason, because I want to see what it's like to live alongside wildlife and actually immerse myself in that, learn from the locals, and then work with the locals. So I'll take you through that the whole time through my research as well. This experience has also shown me how dramatic the consequences can be of actually living alongside wildlife. It really opened my eyes to the reality of living alongside elephants. So then I actually wanted to gain more knowledge, more practical experience of being in the bush. So I got trained as a field guide in South Africa with the FAGASA training, the Field Guides of Association of Southern Africa. And I did the longest training that you can do. And the reason why I did this training was because I wanted to learn how to approach elephants, because, well, elephants are one of the most dangerous animals to approach when we are in a vehicle. So I really wanted to learn how to approach them, how to behave around them. And the truth is, there was no training on how to approach elephant, how to behave around elephants. There was nothing. And every time I would ask the trainers, when we would be talking about that, they would say, well, it's just something that you learn on the way and you'll see what happens, And to me, that's something that I never really understood, because I think that there's some things that we'll learn on the way, obviously, but there's some things that we should and could learn beforehand. And to avoid like this little beginner mistakes that really get elephants angry and actually sometimes create very dangerous situations. So yeah, all these experiences really shaped my interest and my focus I have today in studying human-elephant coexistence. And it really showed me that there are a lot of opportunities that we have today to actually improve our relationships with elephants. So why do I want to study elephants? Well, I think it's a bit obvious. You probably all agree that elephants are incredibly beautiful, incredibly intelligent. And studying them is like always discovering something new. There's so much that we don't know about them. They are so fascinating, and they have such a complex social life, such complex needs, that it's really kind of a whole picture that we look at when we look at the elephant. And all of that makes it so hard for humans to actually live with them, because they are so complex and we don't understand all of them. And at the same time, elephants also attract millions of tourists every year, because tourists want to see them. They are beautiful. And all of that together really increases the human-elephant conflicts. And it really requires more work in this field, because they are beautiful. And when we save elephants, and Mohit says it a lot, when we save elephants, we can actually save a lot more species, because they are such an umbrella species in the ecosystem. So now we'll dive a little bit into the problem. So we already talked about that. Human-elephant conflict is rising. Both humans and elephants are paying the price of it. And we're actually tending to get more and more stressed around each other, because we have more and more negative experiences with them. So let's think about this video a little bit again. So are elephants really being aggressive? Or can we also think about how we might be misunderstanding them, or maybe even misbehaving around them? I think we really need to look at both sides, because very often we tend to say, oh, that elephant is just mean and it's a problem animal and we just need to kill it. But then did we actually look at our sides? What did we do that triggered that elephant? And analyzing these events are very rarely straightforward. we don't want to see only the tip of the iceberg. We really want to go below the surface and see what it is that we are not understanding just yet. So what can we say are the roots of the dangerous encounters we have with elephants? Well, I'll show you this video again. So let me just switch to those videos. Let me see. Okay, so could you all see these videos? Yeah, okay. So let me go back to the slides. So what we saw in this video actually happened in the Kruger National Park in South Africa. So one of the only thing that's actually written in national parks in Africa, in South Africa and Namibia, is actually stay in your vehicle. And the reason why we have this rule is because animals in general are not used to seeing people standing. And most importantly, when they see people standing in their history, it means people hunting. So they get a lot more stress when people are standing, and that's why we ask people to stay in the vehicle. But here the people actually misbehave. They go out of the car, and we see that this first elephant comes out and just is pretty showing that she's not very happy with the situation. She's got the head high and the ears out, and she's really showing a lot of signs of being stressed and not being okay with the situation. And all the elephants come out of the bush, and there's some more ladies running down in the bush. And what we see is that the whole herd actually goes straight to those ladies. And what happens is that they could have attacked them, they could have killed them, they could have trampled them to death. But they did not really. They just ran straight and then just kept going. And what these elephants were actually trying to do here is to get out of that situation. They just wanted to get as far as possible from these humans that they were so scared of. They were not trying to attack. They were just trying to get out of the way. So, I mean, no one was injured in this situation, which is a good thing. But I think people are often not, sometimes they know the rules and they just misbehave. And very often I have seen that myself when I was guiding. People are not actually aware of what it means to be next to an elephant and of how elephants can actually be very dangerous. And this kind of situation where people don't know or fully ignore the situation because the rules because they don't know what risk they have, really leads to very stressful and maybe even dangerous situations for the elephants. And another thing that I want to talk about is the human ego. I call it that way. So there is a tendency to think that we can control nature, that we are, kind of above nature, and that we're not scared, but the truth is that we cannot control everything. And with elephants, there's only so much we can control. And the thing is, in this kind of situation, the only thing we can control is how we had informed and educated ourselves beforehand, before actually going on a safari, before getting in the car where elephants live, and how we behave on the moment. And I think that also has to be considered as a problem, because humans just tend to think that they don't need to learn because they've always lived with elephants, so they don't need to learn how to behave around them. And then, I mean, the human consequences can be tragic, and there are so many newspapers headlines that you can find: human death, humans being trampled, humans being pulled out of safari vehicles. And the Zambian authorities actually called for help in 2024, saying that they had more and more fatal elephants interactions, and that they needed to find a solution, or at least get some work to be done, because it is a big problem. So, and very often the thing is, when an elephant kills, then it is considered as a problem animal. So what happens is that very often then we actually kill it. And the consequences do go both ways, because elephants, African savanna elephants, are actually classified as endangered in the IUCN Red List at the moment. And human-elephant conflicts is actually cited as one of the most important threats to their survival. So it's a very complex web of threats that they have. The human conflict is one big one that they have. So the problem, we have a human-elephant conflict rising on one side, human and elephants are paying the price for sure. And I think two questions that are left here is that why do we come into such dangerous interactions? And why is the frequency of these interactions actually increasing? So I'll go a little bit out, so zoom out, take the bigger picture of the problem. And yeah, we'll just look at, it's not about one charge or one death. It's about how expanding human landscape really intersects with elephant ranges and elephant behavior. So it is a coexistence problem. And I think I'm not breaking any news here. We all know that we have a coexistence problem with elephants. And I think the most important question to ask is that how can two very intelligent, very space-demanding species that we are, elephants and us, can share the landscape together, and especially when all of that is also influenced by tourism and money, because tourism is all about the economy. So I'll take you through a couple of studies to show you what's been done in the field, and then we'll go deeper into the research. So one study actually showed that 62% of the African continent could be potential elephant habitat, but elephants are only using the 17% of it. So it's only the yellow dots that you see. That's where elephants actually live today. And 85% of the potential habitat is outside current protected areas. But what's even more interesting is that even when we try to expand the protected areas, elephants tend to stick to the places they know. Even if it is not in a protected area, they will be where they know they're safe. And all of that is actually shaped by where humans are, because they tend to avoid human activity. So they really are trying to get into the safe place where there's no human activity. And this has been actually proven by many studies. There's only a couple of examples here, that our landscape, the human activities are expanding relentlessly. So the roads, infrastructures, buildings, we are living almost no places untouched. So elephants are restricted to smaller and smaller places. And even in those places, they get disturbed. And I think all of that gets us to two main questions. We know that a large part of their habitat is actually out of protected areas. And humans are expanding everywhere. So, and with only so much space available on Earth, interactions are meant to increase. And this has been proved by many studies. Interactions with elephants, with wildlife in general, will increase. And we already see it today that we have a lot of problem with that. So how can we manage these interactions better? How can we ensure the safety of both elephants and humans? I think that's the main point. And the other thing is knowing that elephants are trying to avoid human activity. And then we have tourism that comes in and kind of try to seek close interactions. So it's a bit contradictory. So how can we ensure the safety and the welfare of both human and elephants in this context as well? And there's another layer to it. So elephants remember really well. And I think we all know that. And past traumas such as culling, relocation, poaching has been shown to have impacts, long-lasting impacts on their social behaviors. And this has been proven in many studies that they can actually have post-traumatic stress disorder, and be it from killing of rhinos or threatening of other elephant females, they do show a lot of signs. But we know it impacts the social behaviors, and that sometimes they tend to be maybe a bit more aggressive, but we don't really know. But there's not been a study looking at how their history impacts their relationship to us, and how what we did to them basically decades and decades ago of like culling and relocation and all the management practices we use, what are the impacts on the relationship we'll have with them in a couple of years? That's never been studied. And then we have tourism that kind of comes in as well. So as I said, tourism happens in protected areas. So it really takes people into the wild places that are left today where there's little, and there's meant to be little human activity. And I mean, even though tourism is economically really interesting for the recipient countries, because I mean, a lot of countries like South Africa and Namibia actually have most of the money from tourism, and some of the money actually goes to conservation. So it's really interesting and really important to keep a tourism industry that's healthy. But the pressure of tourism is actually increasing today. If I take the example of the Kruger National Park, it actually welcomes about 2 million visitors every single year, which is massive. So the pressure is increasing. The space is not increasing though. So we still have the same space. Elephants are still there, but we are coming and coming and coming even more. So, and the 2 million visitors is actually the double what it was 15 years ago. So it's growing really, really fast as well. And even though it is so important economically, we know that it has a lot of negative impacts on wildlife. And there's a lot of studies showing that there's increased stress levels, decreased reproductive fitness. There's a lot of studies on a lot of different species. But when we look at elephants and tourism, and African savanna elephants, there's only 3 studies. 2 of them look at the presence of vehicle and the presence of elephants, and the last one looks at the stress levels and the tourism pressure. But there's actually no study looking at the detailed dynamics, the direct interactions between human and the African savanna elephant. And I'll dive deeper into those papers a little later. So we have the bigger picture. I think we all understand that, but just to make sure we keep the context clear, is that we have elephants that are avoiding humans, and then we have humans expanding relentlessly into the wild places that are left. And then we also have a gap in knowledge because the direct interactions have not yet been studied. And I think the main questions that we keep with that is, how do we ensure the safety and welfare of both elephants and humans in the context of increased interaction and increasing interactions and growing tourism activity? So I'll take you through the research now. And the aim of my research is really to foster safe safe interactions for both humans and elephants. And how do I want to do that? Is I want to use tourism as a lens to study interactions. And what will this allow me to do is it will allow me to look at the interactions directly, because we will know where these interactions occur, so it will be easier to collect the data. So, and for all of that, it will really have a multi-dimensional impact. So the knowledge gained from this research will not only benefit the tourism industry, but it really aims at benefiting anyone interacting with elephants, be it on a daily basis or occasionally. Anyone will actually benefit from this knowledge. And this project is really not just about the academic papers. It's really about creating these practical tools that are missing today to create the real world changes based on the science, and to create a positive impact and create value also for the communities. So to achieve this, I actually created 4 main questions that will guide the research. And I'm just going to take you through each of them, because each of them dives a little deeper into the roots of human-elephant conflicts, and all together they will actually shape solutions for safer and more harmonious interactions. So, the first question is, what are the responses of different elephant populations to vehicle-based tourism across encounter types and different environmental conditions? So this question is so important because we know that elephants are emotionally very intelligent. They are very sensitive animals. So stress can be created in so many situations, but we don't know the conditions of their reactions today. And the three research that I showed you earlier on African elephant and African savanna elephant and tourism actually showed that bulls tended to be more aggressive and herds tended to go away as tourism pressure increased. And that elephants were actually more frequently sighted where there was less human traffic. So again, kind of suggesting that they are avoiding humans. And the last study actually showed that their stress level was correlated to high tourism number. So we know that in the African savanna elephant, stress can be triggered in tourism during the tourism activity. So vehicle-based tourism, I mean by that. But we don't know when and how these behaviors, this stress-related, fear-related, or even sometimes aggression, we don't know when they occur. And what we want to do is actually identify the conditions in which these reactions occur. And we will do that through the direct observations that we want to do on different elephant populations. And this data will allow us to create guidelines, training materials to really help elephants read elephants, to really help people read elephants better, and to get people to avoid dangerous situations. Okay, and then the second question goes a little deeper into the past. So we've seen that population exposed to high poaching levels have been observed to actually display more aggression. So be it the killing of rhinos, the threatening of female elephants, as we said earlier. They also actually seem to charge vehicles a bit more, but it's maybe something we can start thinking that their history might be impacting the relationship we have with them. But today we might think about that, but we don't know to what extent it actually impacts the relationship we have to them. So the history really includes anything from the management practices like culling, relocation, to the poaching or the conflicts they are experiencing today. And understanding their history, understanding what they've been going through in the past, but also what they're living in today, so what the conditions are, the living conditions are today, will really help us adapt our guidelines and our thinking, our understanding locally, and it will support better management practices, inform the management practices in the long term, to recognize that one size does not fit all, because all populations seem to be a bit different based on the history. And one example that I wanted to go through is the Gorongosa elephant example. So the Gorongosa National Park is in Mozambique, and to understand their history, we have to go a little deeper into the history of the country, actually. So Mozambique had a civil war until 1992. And both the government forces and the rebel forces were actually using the Gorongosa National Park as a base. So they were poaching heavily to feed themselves, but they were also poaching elephants heavily to sell them the ivory and finance the weapons. And at the end of the conflict, 90% of all the large mammals were completely wiped out. And there was only 100 elephants left. And it's not only that there were only 100 elephants left, it's that we could almost not see them because they were so wary around of humans. They were so scared of humans that they were doing anything they could to avoid humans. And today, that's something that we still see. Today, they are still very wary. Every time you see Gorongosa elephants, they will be charging or showing signs of being curious and of looking at what these people are doing there. because they have this in mind that people have killed them for decades and decades. And now they are very stressed around humans. They even adapted their patterns, their behavior patterns, because now they are no longer, for example, they are moving through roads and around fences only during the night. And during the day, they are staying in the forest because they are trying to avoid humans that much. And research, and yeah, I think it's really about the fact that they are showing, and it's research actually showed that they are showing post-traumatic stress disorder, even in elephants. It's not only humans. And I think this is a perfect example showing that such a dramatic history, how much it can impact the relationship they have to us today, because these elephants are really hard to see. And when you see them, it's not a very peaceful moment most of the time. But it really shows that such an kind of extreme event can shape their relationship. But we know that such an extreme event can shape their relationship, but we have no idea about how events that are maybe not as extreme as a war, but like culling can be very shocking and traumatizing, relocation, poaching in a small scale, or just conflicts, how it actually shapes the relationship they have to us today. That we don't know, because we know, and I mean, the fact that such an extreme event impacts the relationship gives quite an idea that smaller events can also shape the relationship they have to us. And I also say that as a guide working in different parks, we can see that some elephants in some places will be very relaxed around vehicles, but some others will be very stressed, and most of the time you don't really feel at ease in the situation, in the sighting. And that's something that I really felt very strongly when I was guiding and traveling through Africa, that some populations just felt like they were always stressed around vehicles and some were super, super relaxed. So that's something that really, I think is really worth looking at and digging deeper in the research of how it can impact the relationship to us. And how we want to do that is just by the direct observations and the literature reviews, also talking to the community, seeing what happens with the elephants in these places. All of that will be done. Then the third question. So we want to identify triggers. So as we said, we don't know when and how elephants react. And triggers might actually differ based on the environmental conditions, the past traumas, the daily experiences. I have seen myself that some elephants are very sensitive to some types of sounds and some elephants are not at all. So I think that that's something that would be really interesting to test on them. So we will do sound tests to test the triggers, different sounds that they might be sensitive to actually create a practical toolbox to prevent and predict the dangerous situation, because that will be very practical, and we will know what actually triggers the elephants most of the time, because we can't identify everything, but at least the biggest triggers. And then we want to look at the human side of it. So I have seen that people very often misinterpret elephants. And I think it is a lot less intuitive to read an elephant than it is to read primates, non-human primates, or big cats. We are really used to their ways of communicating, but elephants are very different. I mean, when they move the tail, it doesn't mean that they're happy like a dog. It doesn't. So they are very different, and people get really confused about what the elephant is saying, or is communicating. And I'll show you just another video. Let me just quickly switch to that video. Okay. So I'll just show you this video and then I'll talk about it. Okay, sorry. So let me go back to. So in this video, we could see that the elephant, as the vehicle, right at the start of the video, as the vehicle was pretty far, the elephant gave a head shake, so it was shaking the head. And that's like a warning sign saying that the elephant is not very happy with the situation. It's not very happy with that vehicle coming closer. But you can see that the guide, or the driver, actually keeps driving. And it doesn't stop when the elephant gives that sign. It just keeps going. And what happens is that as it keeps going, the elephant keeps coming towards the vehicle. And then the guide stops the vehicle, the elephant keeps coming a little bit and then stops. And then he's just there, slowly assessing the situation. And what we see is that really the elephant with the trunk is kind of going round and round. And that means like he's thinking, he's really assessing, he's really thinking about what he can do. Is that a dangerous situation? Is it not? Elephants have very different neural connections to what we have. So we tend to have a lot of smaller connections, and elephants have less connections, but they are longer. And that there's a lot of theories around the fact that maybe elephants might actually need more time to think. They might be making decisions a bit slower than we are. And that's why usually sometimes you watch elephants and they look like they're thinking, but it's taking ages. And they might actually be thinking slower than we are. So there you see that the elephant is thinking, and then I don't know if you heard the sound that the guest is like, oh, is the elephant going to let us through? And the guide is like, well, I don't know, let's try. And then he turns the engine on. And as it turned the engine on, the elephant just comes straight to the vehicle with the ears up and open, the head eye, and that really shows that he's fully trying to impress because he's not happy with the situation. And then the guide actually plays with the engine, so he's kind of going faster and faster to impress the elephant. And the elephant gets scared, a bit stressed, and it just runs away. And you can see that at the end of the video, the elephant was actually force feeding. That's something they do to kind of displace. It's kind of displacement behavior because they're trying to show people that they are feeding, but they're not actually really. They're still thinking about that situation there. So I think, okay, these people in that vehicle got out safe. It's all good. They went through and it's fine. Can you just think a minute about another vehicle, maybe that was just behind them, did not see the scene, and now is driving past that elephant? How do you think it's going to react? Well, I have seen that many times, that when an elephant has one encounter like that, if you drive past them a couple of minutes later, they are going to be so stressed, it really left them stressed, frustrated, maybe even angry, that they will react to the next vehicle, and the next vehicle will have no idea what's happening. But because we didn't see what happened before, and that's something that I have seen myself as a guide. So I'll give you a little bit of an anecdote here, that one day I was guiding in Etosha National Park, and there's a leopard sighting that was called in on the radio. And I see the guys just going and going and going. And my guests were asking a lot of questions. So I was still talking to them and saying, well, we will be going to that sighting. But the guys were just going and going and going. And they were going to the road that was parallel to where we were on the sighting already. And on the turn off, there were 3 bulls. Two that had already crossed the roads, and one that was still really kind of stuck in that turn off. And I could see that the elephant was trying everything to give the warning sign. So it was head shaking and giving everything it could to get these people to stop, basically. But the guys just kept going and going and going and going because there was that leopard sighting that was called in. And that's something that happens really often. And elephants are so, I mean, in that season, in wintertime, elephants are everywhere in Etosha. That's the truth. And sometimes tourists can get tired of elephants. And if there's a leopard, they just want to see the leopard. They don't really care about the elephants anymore. But I think it's not a reason to ignore the signs of of an elephant, because we still want the elephants to feel safe where we are and not stressed. But that's my thinking. But yeah, so the guys were going, and I was the last car going because my guests were asking a lot of questions. They had spent a lot of time on safari, so they were not as rushed to see a leopard than other guests maybe. So I slowly went in, saw that elephants that were still trying to give all the warning signs and show that it was not okay with the situation. And I said that he was going to start a mock charge. So I stopped my vehicle as soon as he started, and he did the mock charge and then stopped, left on his way and kept doing his thing. And then I turned my engine on again and just went my way, and everything was fine. But then as I approached the sighting, the leopard sighting, the leopard was actually not there. So all the guys went back, and super, super fast. They just went back and back and back. And the elephants were still there. They had crossed the road. They were a little bit more in the bush. We didn't see them, but they were still there. So all the guys were driving so fast, so close to these elephants. And we all knew that these elephants were there because we all saw them beforehand. So again, I was actually the last car in this crash, and I stopped the vehicle to talk to my guests, explain what happened with the elephants. And as we were talking about that same elephant, that same bull, came out of the bush, and I swear that the trees were like going down and down and down because he was charging, full on charge. That elephant was done. It had given all the warning signs that it could. Now it was done with the situation. It was coming to charge, and everyone got out of the situation fine. But it's a very sad situation that we're creating here, because in this video or in the history, the little story I just told you, what we are teaching the elephant is that we are ignoring the warning signs, and they have levels of warning signs. So if we ignore the first warning signs that they give us, of like looking at us, lifting the head a little bit, having the ears out maybe, or shaking the head, showing that maybe something is disturbing them, then they will go up and escalate and escalate and escalate. And then if we keep ignoring the signs because they're not dangerous to us, they're not charging us, so we can ignore them, we can just keep driving, we'll be faster. That's kind of how people tend to think. But if we keep ignoring them, in a couple of years, or maybe in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, what was meant to be just a simple headshake saying, hey, not super okay with you coming that close, it will be a full-on charge, because the elephants will have learned that humans are not listening to that little headshake. They're not listening to that head high and ears out. They're not listening to that. So I have to escalate and escalate. And the thing they're listening to is actually that full-on charge. And that's what we are teaching the elephants today. By trying to get them off the road, by not letting them time to think, because we know they think slower, by not giving them time to think, by not giving them space, we are teaching them that we're not listening to them. So they will escalate, and chances are that they will actually become more and more aggressive with time. And we never know what would have happened if this driver had stopped as soon as the elephant started the head shake. But chances are that if it had just stopped the engine, kept that distance, the elephant would have just thought about the situation a little bit and moved out of the way. But I mean, we never know. We never know what would have happened, but it's always better to keep them at a distance and not try to get them off the road. And I think that what we want to do with these questions, and we got a little afraid, is that we want to identify what people don't know, because maybe they don't know that. They don't know how elephants react. And maybe they don't know that what we do today will impact how they will react tomorrow, or how they will react to the next car. Maybe they don't know all of that. And chances are that they really don't know. And I have done a survey on my guests when I was working in Etosha, and 96% of my guests, out of 300 guests, told me that they would have loved to have some kinds of guidance, some kinds of education, of information before coming on a safari, to know what they should do, should not do, what they should know about elephants. You don't have to be an expert, but there's some things that you should know, because elephants can be dangerous. So I think that identifying what people don't know, what people need to know, it will really help us create these guidelines, create that education, make it available for people to actually have more responsible, more respectful actions towards the elephants. And I think that's where it all starts, because conservation is not only about animals, it's really about the people today. So yeah, these are the 4 questions. So the responses, the history, the triggers, and the human knowledge, the human behavior. So now I'll talk to you about the practical outcomes that I'm aiming to deliver. So it's not just about the academic papers. It is important for a PhD, but my main focus is really on the practical tools that I want to deliver. Because I am already working with local organizations on the ground to look at what they've already done and what we can improve and how we can do that, how we can collect data that will be interesting for them to improve the training, to improve the guidelines. What do people need to know to improve this the educational content that they already have? So I really want to create guidelines, accessible guidelines, make them available, make sure that when people are booking a car, renting a car to go on a safari, they will have that little pop-up saying, hey, maybe you should get to learn a little bit about elephants because maybe you've never seen one before and maybe it would be interesting to know that, you know. And also improve the trainings, because we've seen it. There's no training about how to behave around elephants. And maybe that's really, really lacking. And I really do believe that it is lacking. And we know that today they are rethinking the Fagasa training in Big 5 areas, because they really think that something is missing because there are too many incidents. So I think that's one big thing that this research really fits in the current problem and the current research that we need. So yeah, my goal is really to inform and empower as many people as possible. So it's not about creating fear, but I think people need to be aware of what elephants can do, what they are capable of, because they can be very dangerous and they can kill you in a second. And people need to be aware of that, so that being aware, then when they are aware of that, then we can actually inspire respectful and more responsible actions towards the elephants. But I really do believe that that's when real coexistence can start, when people start to learn and to respect a bit more. So in all of that, as I already said, collaboration is really key to my research. So I've already have a couple of organizations that are on board for this research, that they want to work with me to improve what they're doing right now and to put new things in place to make sure that we can enhance the coexistence and how people are interacting with elephants where they are. That's only a couple of examples, because I have a lot more coming, and I am still discussing some of them today. So collaboration is really something that I'm striving to create, and I really want to work with, because I really believe that if we want to be successful in creating coexistence, we have to work together. It's really about bringing this different expertise together, and then we can actually move forward. It's about working with the people that actually live with elephants, because it's the people that we need to create better coexistence, because then they will be the one sharing the knowledge. So it is so important. Collaboration is, to me, the most important point in my research, actually. And the research is actually, the whole project is really unique in that it takes a very innovative approach to studying conflicts. So today, when you look at conflict studies, most of them actually look at habitat use or movement of elephants, but here we're really diving deep into the detailed dynamics of human-elephant interaction. And what it does is that a lot of the studies today actually look at how to keep elephants out with the deterrent methods and how to keep them away from humans. And it is such important research, because we need them to get the elephants off the farms, to get them off the human gardens and houses. For sure, we do need that research, and they are so, so important. And I have worked with so many people in this field, and I know how important they are and how, they are so crucial. But the truth is, we have seen that human is expanding, and elephants are not always in protected areas. So interactions will increase. We've seen that. So how can we actually make sure that these interactions go well? And I think that rather than saying, we'll just keep them out, we have to say, okay, we'll keep them out as often as possible. But sometimes it will happen that we'll come into these interactions. And even in tourism context, we will come in interactions, we will come in contact with elephants, because that's also the point of tourism. So, and most of the guidelines today are about stay in your vehicle, keep your distance, and it will be fine, you know. But the truth is, it does happen that the elephant is way too close for comfort. You had not planned that there was an elephant right behind the bush, and now it's really close to the car, and you have no idea what to do because it's your first time seeing an elephant. And I think that, to me, is if you tell these people, keep your distance and you'll be fine, it's kind of giving them the false idea that they will be in control of the situation. And creating better guidelines, and guidelines that will show them that elephants can be dangerous, it will make them aware that elephants can be dangerous, and then make them think about the situation. And they will not go in like, hey, I can control anything, I'll just keep my distance and it'll be fine. And then as soon as an elephant is too close, they will just panic. And I have seen that a lot, that people, when they are driving themselves around parks, they completely panic as soon as an elephant gets a little closer, and then they get out of the car, sometimes take pictures, or then they just start the engine and start driving super fast towards the elephants to scare them away, and they actually create very dangerous situations for themselves, for the elephants, and for others as well. So I really think that creating those guidelines and doing this research will really help us make people aware of what elephants are capable of doing, and then say, hey, keep your distance as often as you can, because that's the most important thing. But when it does happen that the elephant is too close, because it can happen, these are the things that you can do, and these are the things that you should do to keep yourself and the elephant safe. And I think that beyond just giving them ideas of what they can do, because they will be aware that it can get out of control, they will actually probably panic a lot less than if they didn't know and suddenly it just happens. So this project is really about that, about making people aware and getting them to have the tools to react, the practical tools to react well and responsibly, respectfully towards the elephants. And so all of that, the very innovative approach of all the collaboration, I really do believe that this project has the potential to set new standards for how we approach coexistence in the long run. And what I mean by that is that coexistence is a process. So it's not just about one research that will do everything. It's about bringing all the different expertise together to actually create a coexistence that is so comprehensive. And that's why I say we need to find ways to keep the elephants out of where we don't want them to be, because we don't want them to be on farms and all of that. But then when we out of these places, we need to know how to behave as well. So the key takeaways are that we have a conflict rooted in complexity. We've seen that with the human expanding relentlessly, the elephants trying to avoid us. But we also have the opportunity to promote wild elephant welfare. And what we want to do is actually to increase coexistence based on deep scientific and practical understanding. And what I propose here to you today is actually an innovative and multidimensional study focusing on the detailed dynamics of the human-elephant interactions. And what I actually aim to create with this study is practical toolbox for people to use and to enable these real-world changes to happen and have a positive long-term impact through the collaborations that are already put in place. So now I'll just take you through how we can make it happen. So it will start in October 2025, so this year, and the project will last 4 years, full 4 years, with the University of Zurich in Switzerland, and Professor Simon Townsend there, who's an expert in animal cognition, and the University of Portsmouth with Dr. Lucy Bates, who's an expert in African savanna elephant management practices. So both of them will bring in their expertise, and I think it will be a very innovative project in that as well, because they have very different expertise that will be so crucial for this research. And the 2 first years of the research will be focused on the research designing and the data collection, the training as well that I'm planning to do. And then the 3rd year will be more about creating those practical outputs, so like the guidelines, the training materials, working with the local organizations to see how we can put them in place and how we can improve them and what we can do together, and really testing them. So seeing how people receive it, maybe even doing more surveys to see how they feel after having those guidelines, maybe how they feel after having the training. Do they feel more comfortable really testing those guidelines and those practical outputs, so that in the fourth year, I can focus more on the dissemination of the PhD results. But I do really believe that this research is such a big topic and it is so needed that it will not last only 4 years. To me, I see my PhD as a kind of a basis to try the methodology and to really be in the academic field, so that I can be guided for the methodology side of it. But then this research will go on, and it can be tested on more populations, and then more guidelines will be created. And that's really the whole point, is really having the basis of how we can create more practical tools for people to interact better with elephants. And then after those 4 years, it's just expanding this project, because I really see it, and I think Mohit said it at the beginning, it is, to me, my mission to work on human-elephant interaction and to improve these interactions. So this PhD is really because I want to have this academic background and work with people that have done a lot of work in the field, and then we can go on and expand it. So yeah, it is starting in October with all the collaborations that are already put in place. And now we are still in the process of funding. We are getting a bit stuck with the money, so that's also where I need your help. And I'm sure we will find a way, to make it happen, because it is such an interesting and important project that we really need today. And you've seen that is a lot of newspapers headlines that actually talk about that. There's governments, and there's a lot of gap in the research in this field. And that's why this research is so needed. So thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Asian Adventures for organizing all of that. It's great. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melanie. It was absolutely fantastic webinar. Very, very, very deep knowledge that what one has gained from this webinar. I didn't know that the kind of studies that have been done are so few. I would have thought that many more studies had been done on savanna elephant, and it's also endangered now. It's in IUCN Red Data Book, and which is really it's scary. We can't afford to lose these elephants. And like I said, that friends, I'm on a mission to help Melanie with the funding, with her PhD. So if you've got information where she can apply, what are the methods she can secure funding, or if you have any inroads into any companies that would support internationally, I would be very happy to know it. And you can also get in touch directly with Melanie. She has put her Gmail ID here. Just spell it out once, Melanie, so that people can write it down.
Do you want me to put it in the chat? At least they have it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just put it in there.
Do that. And like you all know, that I'm on a mission to help African and Asian elephants, and which is why the logo of this fair is also an elephant. I very firmly believe that if we manage to save the elephants of our jungles, of our grasslands, then many other species will get saved as well. The habitats will be absolutely fantastic then. We have similar problem with corridors. We have problems with depredation. We have problems with tourism, excess tourism, over tourism. We have problems with treating elephants as if they are your toys in the jungles, with safaris and things like that. Safaris are required, tourism is required, but at the same time, we need to also put the guidelines in order. We need to put rules, regulations. They may not be the same for every region. So deep penetration should happen into the systems of these national parks, sanctuaries, wherever we want to run tourism. There are lots of aspects of elephants that will help save a lot of species, provided we start to look at elephant as one being that we really need to protect. When we look at peacocks or elephants in India, we're not, our focus is not elephants. Our focus is tiger. We want to look at the hawks. We want to look at falcons. We don't want to look at the other species. And it's all about predators. That mindset must change. We must look at tourism as a more holistic sort of avenue to protect a species, rather than just making some flagship species as the focus. So Melanie's work will be path-breaking to save savanna elephants. You cannot do without tourism, but you can put some sense into tourism, some empathy, some emotional feel, for something that is putting bread on the table for all of us. So it's important to look at those points. Anyway, I don't want to keep lecturing here. My interest is to get this webinar to you, which will come to you tomorrow as a replay link, and I'll also upload it on YouTube, the abridged version. I want you to use this link to spread her cause, the kind of work that she's doing, and bring opportunities to her. I am on the same mission as you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful, Melanie. I loved every bit of it, and I sat through it. It was some shots of yours were heart-wrenching, and I just feel that it's the same human being who's trying to conserve, and it's the same human being who's completely indifferent to it. So it's very easy to change the mindset, but we need to have tools to change that. There are questions that people want to check. Tazun has been asking, a lot of elephant research requires tranquilizing the elephants for radio coloring, etc. So do you think the tranquilizing experience will get embedded in the elephant's memory also and will affect its behavior next time?
It is a really interesting question. I do think that it could, because obviously it is not such a positive experience that they have very often to do it with helicopter, that kind of flying and trying to, if they do it with a herd, they're trying to disperse the herd so that they get the individual they're interested in separate from the herd, so that they can tranquilize it and actually color it or do all the tests that they need to do. And I do think that these experiences are very stressful, not only for the individual that is going to be tranquilized, but most probably more for the whole herd. And because they live together, they share the knowledge, they will know that having a helicopter on top of them will end in a very stressful situation. So I do think that it might impact them, but because it's not so much with the cars, it might not impact their reactions to vehicles, if that makes sense. Because it's most more often done with helicopter trying to separate the herd or trying to separate the individual and leading it to a place where they can actually access the individual once it's tranquilized. So I do think that maybe with a helicopter and things that are above their head, it might really it might impact them, but not so much with vehicles. That's my thinking. But just
also Tazun Saab, we need to understand that elephants have very strong intelligence. They experts say that they share 96% of human intelligence. So they have very strong processing power as to what is logical for them. And they only don't go by the memory. The memory can be there, but they also take very intelligent steps to mitigate any such situation that can jeopardize the future of a herd. So if it's for their betterment, that you will see that it changes very soon. The elephant becomes very very gentle, with those who are trying to save it, who are trying to do things. So there are different, and it's okay if we are going to do a few things to some elephants for the sake of other elephants. It's okay. We need to have larger goal in mind to save the entire herd, rather than worrying only about one particular specimen.
Yeah, for sure. See that. I'm just looking at the chat because there were some questions during the presentation.
Yeah, I think you've shared your Hari Krishna is asking. We can see that people are standing there in the field filming the animals. What solution can be put forward for this? He's working in the field with topic related to wild elephants in India, and here also he's seen much worse conditions.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think it's a very hard thing to tackle because there will always be, and I've seen it myself, these people that will know better and will not want to listen. Because even if you tell them that it's not a good thing to do and all of that, they will be a bit stubborn and just want to do it. So I think that's a hard thing to do, but I think that regulation, but also rangers should be a lot more active on that. And in places where rangers are a lot more active and actually finding people and controlling a lot more what people are doing, So I think it's also being active in the ground and being like on the ground and actually like finding people that if we need to, because there's something that they should not do, but maybe also I've seen people do this kind of thing. And when I was a guide, I used to tell people like, please get back in your car. You're going to stress these animals. They're not used to seeing us standing. The experience of them having human standing is hunting. So it's very stressful for them to have a human standing here. And then they will say, oh, sorry, I didn't know about that. I'll get back in my vehicle. So I think there's the two case scenarios of like the people that don't know, but also the people that know but don't really care. And the people that know but don't really care, then there's not much we can do about them except for having more forces on the ground actually controlling and finding and getting people out of the park if it needs. But then the people that don't know, we need to educate them better. So I think that's the two scenarios that we can have in this situation.
Yeah. There's one more question for you, Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie, is your research only limited to interaction with humans during tourism?
Is that, sorry, I didn't get where is it?
Yeah. Is your research only limited to interaction with humans during tourism?
No. So it uses tourism as a lens because it's where where interactions will happen. So it's kind of a way to predict where the interactions will happen so that the data collection can be done. But it will also include surveys of the local communities and, if possible, observations of local interactions with local communities as well. But I mean, in national parks, you can also see locals driving through because they need to deliver fuel or whatever, and you see a lot of local interactions with the locals and not only with tourists. So it's using the lens of tourism, but it's really about helping the tourism industry because it is really important economically and we're using it a lot, but the pressure is increasing and we need to improve what we're doing in the tourism industry. But it's also about helping locals having more guidelines and more knowledge about how they should behave and what they should not do around elephants and have that knowledge available for them. So it's really using tourism, but both ways, not only about tourism, definitely not, because that's also why I'm collaborating with local organizations, because I really think that it will benefit, and they also think that it will benefit the local communities as much as it will benefit the tourism industry. So yeah, I don't know if that answered.
Yeah.
Let me know if it did not.
Yeah, quite well actually. Yeah. So we've got very interested people here who have stayed throughout and listened to every word that you said, and I'm going to send them the replay link tomorrow, and then also make it for crisp, so people can start to circulate it around within their networks. Tanuja is here. Says, thank you, Mohit and Melanie. Your presentation is truly said conservation of, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Tanuja. Thank you very much. Okay, good. So let's. Okay, last question. Last question. The Zoom says, do you think collaborating and data collection from trusts like Sheldrick's Trust that work extensively with elephant rescue and rehab will help you?
That's a good question as well. I think it could, but it's also about, because sometimes you want to get as much data as you can, but then because they are taken so differently, you can't actually use them for the research. So I have talked to them as well and looking at what we could do together. So because it will also be really interesting to look at a population that has a history of being orphaned. You know, how do they react to humans? And I think that's really interesting. Interesting point as well, because they will probably react differently to people that have had such close contact to humans as well. So yeah, it would definitely be interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think that was the thing that Tezun, sorry if I miss.
Yeah, Tezun.
He said that coexistence. No, that guides are also about, I think more than ignoring the signs, it's about the drivers and guides trying to give some adventure and adrenaline experience to the guests for tips from my experiences in India and Africa. And I think you're completely right. And then you get you also get money when you give a great experience for the guide. So it's also that they're trying to give the most of what they have. But I think we need to find the balance between giving them the most beautiful experience, but also respecting the elephants. And I think that balance is not yet really reached in that field.
It requires training, that requires talking.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. It was a wonderful, absolutely wonderful webinar, and everyone really enjoyed it. And we'll be on the job for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for organizing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, friends. We'll see you soon on one of our webinars. Bye-bye.
Thank you.